So first of all, I would like to ask you about this deal that was presented by the President of the United States. And as I understand, you support this offer, but the Prime Minister's statement says, I will quote, "The war will not end until all of its goals are achieved, including the return of all hostages and the elimination of Hamas's military and governmental capabilities." So the main question, as I understand, is that do you see a guarantee of Hamas elimination? And is there a plan in this offer to eliminate Hamas?
Well, first of all, if I may correct you on a small beat, this is not an American offer.
I was going to ask you about that too, yes.
This is an Israeli offer made by the Prime Minister. It's a 4.5 pages long paper that was presented to the Americans and to the Egyptian mediators by Netanyahu. So what President Biden did was just publishing an Israeli offer in a way of pushing the sides towards the negotiating table. So right now we are puzzled by the interesting question whether the Israeli government will accept the Israeli Prime Minister's offer because of the more extreme elements within his government that will probably will resist the idea of going into ceasefire. So right now, I think what we are discussing is the first stage of the ceasefire, which is 6 weeks of ceasefire, a return of 30 or more of the hostages in return of some Palestinian prisoners, and then we can see whether or not we can go forward with this. So this is the current situation.
Okay, but it's really weird for me personally, because as I understand, the representative of Prime Minister says, well, it's not a perfect deal, but we're fine with this. It doesn't look like it's his proposal. Is this kind of a game or something?
It is his way of trying to avoid the political implications of such a deal. Everybody in his right mind understands that we need to permanently eliminate Hamas and kill its leaders, because this is a terrible terror organization, radical Islamic terror organization that have massacred thousands of Israelis. But the reality on the ground is it's going to take some time. And the hostages doesn't have this time. And therefore, we have to make this deal. And then we'll see what's going on moving forward. But so this is the dilemma that Israel is tangled up in. And we have to understand that there are no good choices. We only have bad choices as it happens in a wartime.
Again, you support this offer, this proposal. Do you think that in the long term, it will help Israel and Palestinian state to build these states and to live peacefully together without Hamas? Do you think that this road leads to this perfect future? Maybe not perfect, but better future?
I don't know. It's a little premature. I think right now, this is a very narrow deal that is mostly engaged in the question of a current ceasefire and the hostage situation. I don't see from this deal an evolution, how it will evolve into a bigger negotiation towards Palestinian statehood of any kind. And besides, if we'll ever have an opportunity to have this kind of negotiation, it will be with the Palestinian Authority, not with Hamas. Hamas is just a radical terror organization. They don't care about the two-state solution. They don't want a two-state solution. They just want to kill Jews.
This whole situation and this offer, which was presented by the President of the United States, was not actually taken by the members of the cabinet, of the government of Israel, some members, far rights. So this can lead to the elections in Israel. Clearly not the best time, because the war is going on and this political instability is not something useful for the state of Israel, as I understand it. What's your prospect on that?
Well, I disagree. I think it's the best. It's a good time. I think it's again, we have only bad choices. This is not the right government to lead the country in time of war. This is not the right government to win Hamas. This is not the right government to help us rehabilitate Israel's position or statue in the world, and therefore we need a new government. I mean, I feel a bit uncomfortable to speak against the Prime Minister in international media during wartime, but this is the wrong Prime Minister and the wrong government, and we should have a very quick election and replace this government with a more functional body.
So if you are in the government after these elections, do you have a plan?
Yes, the plan is to move forward. The idea, what we lack now, or part of what we lack now, is a clear vision of what should be the day after in Gaza. What should be the day after in Gaza is a coalition of the more moderate Sunni states, the Saudis, the Emirates, the Egyptians and Jordanians, of course, with the international community led by the United States and with the Palestinian Authority. This is the problem, because this is what, in this current government, nobody is capable of saying, because they're too afraid of the far-right elements. They are not even far-right, they're just extremists and populists. And because of them, there's no way of them saying we understand that the Palestinian Authority should be part of the civilian management of Gaza. Of course, we will never let the Palestinians again to manage the security. The security of Israel is going to be in the hands of Israel. But basically, I have no problem with the Palestinian Authority being part of the civilian management of Gaza, as they do in the West Bank in full cooperation with Israel.
Okay. If you allow me, I would like to ask you about the arrest warrant that was requested by the ICC prosecutor, the International Criminal Court prosecutor. Arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel. This kind of warrant is issued already for Vladimir Putin. And to me, this is kind of an attempt to make these two men equal, right? To put them in equal circumstances. Do you think that Netanyahu and Putin deserve the same punishment for what they're doing? I'm asking you as a representative of Israel, not as a leader of opposition.
Of course not. The difference is Vladimir Putin has invaded a democratic country, and Netanyahu is the prime minister of a country that was invaded by a terror organization. There's no compulsion there. And the level of hypocrisy in these arrest warrants is unbelievable to me. Right now, as we speak, there are 18 million people in Sudan suffering from hunger, starvation, and violence, and nobody's doing anything about this. And Israel, a democratic country that is trying to protect its life and trying to avoid another massacre, is being prosecuted. It doesn't make any sense to me. This is, and there's no, you know what, I'm usually careful about shouting anti-Semitism about everything. This is anti-Semitism.
And the rise of anti-Semitism, or I don't know how to call it, is clear, right, in the whole world. But would you call the recognition of Palestine by the European countries an act of anti-Semitism, or you evaluate it differently?
I call it an act of stupidity, because no, it's, I don't know. I tend not to, I don't think the entire people of Spain are anti-Semitic. I think it's counterproductive. I think for those of us who are for a peace process, who are for the two-state solution, this is the worst idea, because this cancels the main idea that the Palestinians also has to do something in order to move forward towards peace. We want them to make an effort. We want them to make an effort against incitement in the textbooks. We want them to make an effort, of course, against terror. We want them to make an effort against Hamas and the Islamic Jihad. And we want them to make effort in order to get rid of the horrible corruption within the Palestinian Authority. When those countries are unilaterally recognizing them as a country, they're telling them, actually, you don't have to do anything in order to become a country. You don't have to negotiate with the Israelis. You don't have to be in a dialogue with the international community. Just sit tight and we will do the work for you. And therefore, they have no burden of proof on their side. So it's counterproductive. It will not help. It only makes everybody angry, and it only makes the Palestinians too complacent about what they need to do.
But how would you explain this wave of recognition and support? It's not only about the recognition. You can see the reaction of people, the young people. And this is one of the problems you know, this is complicated, but this is one of the problems of relationships between Israel and the United States, because Joseph Biden is in the middle of a presidential campaign. But you can see how this terrible attack against Israel and then the war in Gaza came to the situation when it looks like a majority supports Palestine and Palestinians. How would you explain it? Maybe there is something the Israeli side has lost, or there are mistakes made by Israeli side.
Well, first of all, there is, of course, mismanagement on the Israeli government side. They're not handling it well. But on top of this, my answer to you is money. There are radical elements that are pushing hundreds of millions of dollars into propaganda against Israel, into the social networks. If you see what happens with the algorithm of TikTok and Instagram, which are very influential on young people, then you'll understand what is happening. This is a lot of money pushed against Israel and against the Jews, and we have to deal with it in a better way than we are now. But let me reassure you, on the other hand, it was polled in the United States, it was polled in Europe. The majority of people do understand what is really happening here. I mean, these young people in the campuses who are what Lenin used to call, you know, useful idiots, are just being misled by social networks, by 10 seconds clips in TikTok. They're demonstrating and shouting and yelling from the river to the sea. You ask them what river, they don't know. You ask them which sea, they don't know. They are uninformed and they are biased. The majority of people do understand that Israel is protecting itself from a vicious enemy, from a vicious terror organization. It was polled again and again. The numbers are to be worried about. We are worried about it. The Israeli government should do a better work explaining what is it that we're doing. But I think the majority of people understand that the reason we are in war in Gaza is because if we will not, it will happen again. There will be another October 7th, and we're not going to let it. We're not going to let this happen.
So one more question. I would like to ask you about the President of Ukraine, Zelensky, who has made a statement inviting Israel and Palestine to the peace summit in Switzerland. And you know that Ukraine recognizes Palestine, and it happened years ago. Tens of years ago. But in this particular case, he was saying that Israel had a right of self-defense, but, quote, the civilians should not suffer. So, I mean, he was supporting, and he supports the civilians of Gaza, which is significant, as I understand, in these circumstances, that he actually talks about that. What's your reaction to that? And what's your reaction to this invitation to the summit?
Well, I don't know if the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is going to be solved in Switzerland with the help of Kiev, but I do agree with President Zelensky that civilians should not be hurt in any war. This is exactly the difference between democracies and terror organizations. This is exactly the difference between a law-abiding country like Israel and Hamas and Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad. Now, of course, there are casualties, there are bystanders who are being hurt, but and we have to do our best in order to avoid this. And we are doing our best in order to avoid this. And I totally agree that civilians should not be killed in wars as long as, and part of the problem we have is the fact that Hamas is using his own children as human shield in this war, and therefore we have too many casualties, and we're trying our best in order to narrow down this number.
Do you plan to take any participation in this peace summit in Switzerland?
Well, right now, there's no plan I know of any Israeli formal, or not even an invitation for any Israeli formal body to participate in this conference in Switzerland. And again, this has been dealt with in Qatar and in Cairo and in Washington and in Jerusalem. And I think these are the right places to try and figure out the solution to the terrible situation we are all caught up with.
I understand that Israel has a lot of its own problems and the war is going on. But, final thing I wanted to ask you about is, following up with Ukraine and this peace summit and the situation, the war that is going on in Ukraine, would you agree that there is kind of a, I don't know, maybe feeling of letting down by Israel coming from Ukraine? Maybe there is a problem between the two states, Israel and Ukraine, because of, some differences and because of position that Israel has taken from the beginning of the full-scale invasion. Do you see the problem between Jerusalem and Kyiv?
Well, I understand the pain, but I'm reminding you on February 24th, on the evening of February 24th, the day Russia invaded Ukraine, I already held a press conference. I was foreign minister at the time, held a press conference saying that we're going to stand and we're going to side with Ukraine, and we're going to help Ukraine as much as we can under the complicated circumstances that we have. I later on sent the first, and as far as I know, the only field hospital to Ukraine with Israeli doctors. We did our best in order to help. President Zelensky was unhappy because he also wanted us to send weapons to Ukraine. Israel made the decision not to do so. I think this kind of decisions needs to be checked and rechecked almost on daily basis, and we are willing to listen to any claim that he had. But Israel is siding with Ukraine. Ukraine was invaded unjustly, and Russia should withdraw from Ukraine, and the sovereignty of Ukraine should be guarded by the international community.
Thank you so much for this opportunity and for this conversation. And I hope to see you again on TV Rain.